some of these parents that I try to work with, I do a lot of coaching, a lot of recovery coaching. Sometimes I find myself struggling to try to get through to them because a lot of parents will look at me and say, you're right, I know I do that, I should probably stop, or I've taken them to rehab before. The counselor called, they use the word codependent, know what a codependent is. I know I am codependent. Hello, my name is Pej. I am with Pej Interventions. I am an interventionist and a recovery coach. I've been doing this for quite some time. I work with lots of families and with individuals who are on the path of recovery or should probably get on the path of recovery. Today's topic is enabling parents that have to stay in control. There's a reason that I wanted to talk about this is because as a person that's a professional that's often called upon to try to help people get the help that they need for their loved ones, I notice that often the families are, excuse my French, more sicker than the individual because of being so enmeshed in their lives, always trying to be in control, providing a space for them, giving them money, constantly just, feeding their addiction, feeding their disease of addiction, feeding their alcoholism, however that may be. I've got stories. So there's right now in my life, I probably have about 5 families that I've watched for a good 5 to 7 years, enabling their loved ones. And when they first came to my life and asking me for professional advice or for me to even work alongside them, it appears that some of them have been doing this for a long time, far too long, like too long to where no wonder the kids aren't getting better. And some of them aren't kids anymore. Some of them are grown adults. Some of them are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. So that would mean that they are adults at this point, but they still behave like kids because perhaps they were spoiled when they were younger. Perhaps they were given everything as they were growing up. In my community, in the Persian community, there is a lot of spoiling. There's a lot of give them. And so there's a high expectation from their loved one. And then when you take away from them because they might start acting out or they get into drugs or alcohol, then they get angry. And so they'll start acting out in certain ways. Some of these parents that I try to work with, I do a lot of coaching, a lot of recovery coaching. Sometimes I find myself struggling to try to get through to them because a lot of parents will look at me and say, you're right, I know I do that, I should probably stop, or I've taken them to rehab before. The counselor called, they use the word codependency. I know what a codependent is. I know I am codependent, but, and there's always a but that's attached. So a lot of times they'll still hover. They're still helicopter moms or helicopter dads. They have to have some kind of involvement, if not full involvement, in everything that the individual does, which then doesn't allow the individual who is struggling with addiction or alcoholism or mental health or the whole gamut, it doesn't allow them to grow. They can never actually go somewhere in life because somebody's always constantly needing to be the puppeteer, trying to control every step and move of their life. And another thing is that a lot of parents will pay for everything. They'll pay for their health insurance, they'll pay for their car payment, they'll pay for their car insurance, they'll pay to put food in their stomach, they'll pay all of their bills. So that also doesn't give the person a sense of responsibility and doesn't allow them to actually grow. I know somebody right now that's 50 years old. It's a beautiful human being. I love working with him when he's doing well, but unfortunately there's a now you see it, now you don't type of mentality that he has where the mom will say something or he'll say something or he'll feel some kind of insecurity or some money will hit his account and then he's off to the races. And once again, he'll go right back to the streets and end up using, and it'll just be like that for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years. So the person never gets better. And I often tell the mom, until one of you doesn't break this cycle, this individual is not going to get better. It's going to have to be either you, where you stop, or it's going to have to be him. You may not be alive. You may not live to see your son sober because of how much you want to be involved and how much you don't listen. And then there's, other cases too where often I will try to work with them. Some people will try to create boundaries. There's one individual that stands out to me whose daughter is now in her late 30s, almost in her 40s. And usually he'll stay out of it and he'll just leave her be. And she's resorted to homelessness. This is something that she chose to do. And then every once in a while he'll call and say, what do you think about us getting her back into treatment? What can we do? And I say, well, she definitely needs treatment because she's drinking, she's using, she's homeless. It would be best for her to get into treatment. And then the individual will say, the father will say, well, you know, I got her a hotel room the last few nights. What do you think about that? And I'll tell him, well, you know, you're basically now taking her off the streets, putting her in an environment where she can be and continue to use drugs comfortably, however that may be. And he knows himself how she's getting them. It's no question in his mind she's probably selling her body to be able to get the drugs, or getting with certain people that don't really care about her well-being but will give her something to get something, you know. And so that's scary within itself, but she doesn't get well. You know, I've even told these two different parents, you know, it seems like you guys are in a competition for who can enable more. And it never, you know, ceases to amaze me that somebody will say something after all the instructions that I've given them, the do's, the don'ts, they'll go right back to doing it all over again. It's a sickness within itself. Codependency is a sickness within itself. The parent will become addicted to their loved one. They call them sometimes their qualifier. I say that's the individual, the person that is the IP, the identified patient, the person that needs the actual help. And then the parent, because they always have to have a hand in everything, they keep their loved one sick. And they wouldn't know how to deal with them any other way. Heaven forbid that their kid actually gets some recovery under their belt without them having their hand in it. How would they be able to have a relationship with their kid? Right? How would they be able to be involved in their lifestyle? Because it is a family disease. This is the family dynamic is what's keeping the individual sick in more cases than none. There are some people that don't have families and they have their own addiction problems, and then they will find somebody who we sometimes call as a hostage. Let's say, for example, they'll find a boyfriend or a girlfriend, somebody that brings them into their home, feeds them, gives them some money, washes their clothes for them, or at least gives them a place to be able to clean up and wash their own clothes or shower up. But unfortunately, when somebody has an addiction problem, their addiction is going to be more overpowering than anything that you provide for them. They don't really recognize or appreciate somebody that's loving them and giving to them, right? So it doesn't always necessarily have to be enabling parents. It can just be an enabling person, somebody who doesn't distinguish the person's addiction from their recovery, their disease from their wholesomeness, their goodness, how somebody can tap into soul. It's amazing to me too that often some of their loved ones will come into treatment or will come into a sober living environment, and they'll clean up for a while and you see them thriving. Like sometimes they're actually working at, let's say, for example, a 12-step program. They have a sponsor, they're making meetings, they're doing really, really good. But the second they talk to their parents a little bit too much, or they want to have some involvement with their parents in their lives, or their parents want to have involvement in their lives, this brings up old stuff. And when one isn't treated, then suddenly the one that's trying to treat themselves and do better for themselves, trauma comes up. Sometimes they'll feel like they are being judged. Sometimes they'll feel like they're being lectured yet one more time, or being told how to do recovery, right? I believe that when the family works on themselves and the individual works on themselves, we are on a balanced scale. But when the individual is trying to work on themselves, the scale will tilt this way if the family member is not working on themselves. But and I say this from experience, personal experience, it started to work better for me in my life when I went and got recovery and my mom stopped meddling in my life. And when my mom started to work on herself in her recovery space, and I was working on myself, we were able to have a very healthy conversation. The most beautiful things that I have noticed more recently is that there's people that have found me on my YouTube channel and they've reached out to me. One lady, actually, this stands out too, said, what can I do? Like, would I be able to have a conversation? I've watched your self-disclosure videos, and would I be able to talk to your mom? And I said, sure, what would you like to talk to her about? Well, I want to know what she did with you and how you got to change your life and become this person that's a sober man that loves to embrace his sobriety. And I said, well, tell me what's going on. And she told me a little bit about her son and how he's in his 40s and how he's got this methamphetamine problem and how similar it was to my story. And I told her the do's and the don'ts and what I would do and what I wouldn't do. And then afterwards she said, but can I still talk to your mom? And I said, absolutely, you can talk to my mom. But just so you know, if you talk to my mom, she's going to tell you the same stuff that I told you, because we've both been educated and have learned the do's and don'ts and what not to do. Over a period of time, I actually started coaching that lady just to work with her and her husband in helping her figure out ways of trying to get her son on the right path because she was totally enabling the son for a long time. And then eventually the son became incarcerated for some crimes that he committed. And more recently, we actually got her son out of jail, and now he's in one of our homes. And he's thriving. He's doing very well. And the mom basically listened. Oh, by the way, she did end up talking to my mom, and my mom told her exactly the same things that I'm talking about here. So remember something. If you have codependency and you're enabling your loved one, this, unfortunately, you are keeping them sick. Meaning that, yeah, I know it's with good intention. You're really hoping that you have some kind of magic words that they're going to end up listening to and following your path and your whatever you're trying to put out there for them. But if you find yourself at your wit's end and your loved one's not getting better, it's better to seek professional help. If you'd like to talk to me about any type of coaching services that I can provide for you, or even intervening on your loved one's life, because you're at your wit's end and nothing's getting better, you can always reach out to me at 310-596-9356. Thanks.